No, okay, we're live. Hello. Excellent. Hello, good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's stream. How's everybody doing today? Can you guys make sure if you can't hear us, if I need to turn Armchair up, please let me know. But yes, we'll be doing a collaboration with Armchair today, who has graciously agreed to discuss two topics. So we're going to take a look at, to begin with, the Men's Day drama involving Bao and Shondo, and we're also later on going to take a look at the male VTubing experience, I suppose we could call it, and take a look at some of the realities of VTubing, because I know that there seems to be this cycle every year, Armchair, isn't there, where it just becomes cool to dunk on male VTubers, and you see a lot of guys get really self-conscious about it.
Yeah. It's something that I didn't pay much attention to when I first started watching VTubers. Well, actually, specifically before I made a Twitter account myself. But afterwards, yeah, I did also notice that you're right about it being a sort of annual cycle, so to speak.
Yeah, and I guess this year, is probably the worst year I've ever seen it, and I think that's
yeah.
I think that's probably come from just the sheer volume now of VTubers, particularly female VTubers on socials now, because VTubing is continually growing. But then at the same time, it doesn't help when there's situations.
I was going to say, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say that I think part of the reason why it was so bad this year stems, or at least in my mind, it stems from specifically the two people who sort of kicked it off.
It was happening a little bit before Bao and Shondo was before the Oopsie Daisy, but this obviously accelerated it into high gear. So yeah, we'll be, I guess, going over this a little bit. I'm really interested in hearing what Armchair has to say as well, guys, because we were talking a little bit before stream, and we're actually on kind of opposite ends of the equation, where on a personal level, I'm not bothered really by the initial stuff said by Bao and Shondo. And I guess I think professionally, actually speak, I think they did okay personally, but bad professionally. Whereas I think you're more on the side of you take a personal issue with some parts, but think professionally they handled it quite well to some extent. Is that right?
Yeah, or at least I think professionally, and I mean this purely in the sense of their own brands and stuff. I think that the tweet didn't do too much damage to either Bao or Shondo, because Shondo was able to recover from it quite gracefully, and Bao, I don't think something like this would bother her.
Yeah, and that's right. I mean, I guess this we'll get onto a little bit later, but I do think that people grossly overestimate how much influence Twitter actually has on things. But
oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, thank you very much for the $1, my trumpet buddy. So I guess let's kind of start off and go through this in a chronological order. So to give you the quick rundown, guys, on what this drama is about. So about a month ago now, actually, there was this tweet which came from popular independent VTuber Bao the Whale, where she said, if you're an up-and-coming female content creator with a small but growing audience, and a much larger and successful male content creator approaches you out of nowhere and showers you with attention on stream, in DMs, etc., don't walk, run. And I guess when I first read this tweet, Armchair, I didn't have a problem with this whatsoever. I thought this was a very fair and honestly accurate concern to give to people. And the reason why I thought like that to begin with is I didn't read this as a all men are bad and all men are sexual predators tweet, because she's making she's using specific language such as very large and successful male content creator, but showers you with attention in DMs and streams, etc. That does weird people out a little bit, and you can be a bit suspicious as to people's intentions. So there's nothing wrong with a much larger content creator, wanting to talk to you, wanting to interact with you, but when they're love bombing you and they're giving you so much attention out of nowhere, it does seem weird. So I was quite surprised to see the reaction that it got, honestly. I mean, this really upset people, and if we take a look at the 4.7 million views as well, this probably did leave its intended audience to some extent as well. So,
to a major degree.
To a major degree, yeah. So I think we need Twitter to have a pin where we have your little flowchart of when to post and not post on Twitter.
That's one of the things that constantly amazes me, is how people that have massive followings on Twitter, they don't seem to understand that the algorithm is explicitly geared towards forcing your content in front of as many people as possible, which automatically includes people who aren't familiar with you, your content, your personality, or anything else about you. So this is just unfortunately, and I said this in a response to I think Bao herself on one of the follow-up posts that she made about how this left her sphere or whatever, which is, if you have a large following on Twitter beyond a certain point, you don't really get a choice anymore in whether your tweets get shown to people who aren't part of your audience. And none of us like that, but it's just a reality of the site itself. That's just how it's built.
Yeah, you can't unfortunately bend reality to the way you like it. Did you, just to quickly go on tangent, did you see Necro's post about Lisa?
Yes, I did.
I DM'd him afterwards just to check if he was okay, and he did say he didn't expect that to leave, the intended audience. And I said, yeah, you should probably watch some of Armchair stuff and understand how Twitter works.
Yeah, Twitter has a tendency to catch you when you have your pants down about something.
Billy's here. What currency is SGD actually? How are you doing, Billy? You can shitpost in here, Billy, don't worry. Thank you for the donation. But yeah, what was your takeaway then when you first see this tweet on Chair? Kind of what's your, I guess, personal take, interpretation of it, and then what do you think about this from a PR professional standpoint?
Overall, I also understand that what she was talking about was more a complaint about a behavior than a demographic. So this, statistically speaking, she is correct, right? Like, the advice is sound in the sense that more often than not, when you hear stories about, someone being approached in a sleazy or slimy manner behind the scenes, often by a larger content creator, the stories will go where the perpetrator is a male content creator and the victim is a female content creator, right? Statistically speaking, that is how things have turned out. So if we're just talking about the reality of the situation, more times than not, what she said in this post is going to be a source of solid advice. If someone approaches you out of nowhere and, exactly like you said, they start love bombing you, or basically showering, in her words, showering you with attention on stream in DMs when there's no pretext for that behavior, then yes, that you should take that as a sign that they probably want something from you. And so, don't walk, run, etc., etc. But where it started being, I suppose, where it started being something that bothered me was when I read it, I suppose, in context of some of the stuff that was happening around it. So first was the fact that this was a tweet that she would later specify was referring to examples among streamers like Mizkif, right?
Yeah.
And when you're talking about, Twitch streamers and stuff, I don't think, on a personal level, I don't think this tweet would have ever been received well at the time that she posted it. Because this was the height of when people were starting to talk about Twitch streamers in particular having a very gender slanted bias when it comes to dealing with, calling out, punishing instances of sexual misconduct, where that heavily favors women. Right? This was when people were talking about the whole Nina Lin thing. So, as context for people who aren't aware, Nina Lin is a female Twitch streamer who was around this time basically being publicly lambasted for essentially assaulting men on stream, right? Assaulting a male editor of another content creator, and also around the same time, Disguised Toast, another big streamer, came out and said that there was a previous incident where she assaulted him on camera, but he didn't say anything because he didn't want to make the situation awkward. And she was, after everyone made a big hullabaloo on Twitter, etc., because that's the only way Twitch understands, when something's going wrong on their platform, they banned Nina Lin and then unbanned her after a day. And that sends like a very clear message to people in general. And when the problem with using Twitter as a platform to sort of engage in a sort of discussion about, the problem of using Twitter to vent your personal feelings about something is that it always gets roped into a larger discussion. And that was for me at least, that's why when I read this tweet, my knee-jerk reaction was, you're right, but this is not going to age well. This is not going to be received well. There is no way in hell that this gets taken the way that it was intended.
You're right, and you're right about the timing as well, because obviously this took place not long after Cinder returned as well, and obviously because of this whole Cinder drama thing within which Bao was involved in, there are people right now who are still very sore about that and are probably looking for an opportunity to attack her for that. But sorry, yes, go on.
It wasn't, that was part of it as well, but that feeds into the other two reasons why personally I feel like the more I read this tweet, the more I the more I found it to be a little eyebrow raising. The other thing was that you did identify that, she was specific about the idea of, a big content creator approaching you out of nowhere and showering you with attention on stream, in DMs, etc. And, the advice, don't walk, run, right? That's it's pretty clear what she's saying you should do. Just, avoid them, shut down, etc., etc. But there were two things about that particular part of the tweet that bothered me. One was the fact that she was vague about the behavior, but specific about, the gender. If you actually go through the replies of this initial tweet, it's really obvious that Bao does not view this as a gender-slanted issue. When she refers to when she's talking about, or when she conceptualizes the issue of larger content creators behaving in a slimy or predatory manner towards smaller ones, trying to get in their pants because they're flexing their numbers or influence or whatever, she herself does not view this as a male perpetrator only thing. Like, she is very clear in the replies of the tweet that no, she understands that both men and women do this. But the problem is, this is Twitter. No one's going to read the replies of your post to gain a more nuanced view of how you actually think about something. And the thing about her initial tweet was she did only specify, bigger male content creator and female, presumably. She says, right, if you're an up-and-coming female content creator, smaller female victim, right? So she's specific about that dynamic, but she's not very specific about identifying, okay, what constitutes, what do you mean by shower you with attention on stream in DMs? What constitutes out of nowhere? For example, let's say you react to one of their videos and then they start, approaching you. What, should you view that as being bad? Is that out of nowhere? Has there been sufficient pretext for them to approach you? And when she says shower you with attention on stream in DMs, again, I can see how most people are going to understand that, this behavior refers to love bombing. Yeah. But I have doubts about the average, I suppose, the average Twitter user's ability to properly gauge what that line is supposed to describe, imply, and outline. And then finally, the thing that bothered me the most about that sentence was don't walk, run. And the reason why that bothered me was because this is going to sound, actually, I'm trying to figure out a way of phrasing this that doesn't make me sound like a pretentious ass.
Yeah, God, I'm really interested now. Yeah. Just do it.
The thing that I don't like about the way that the tweet ends is that it kind of strips the woman in question in this hypothetical scenario of all agency. because
Okay.
the way that the tweet is worded, it seems to be aimed at a very specific demographic of women who are, to put it bluntly, too stupid or too naive to understand that if someone bigger approaches you out of nowhere and starts, showering you with attention and all of that stuff, you're not supposed to get that they probably want something from you, right? That's not supposed to send off alarm bells in your head. And I mean, there is a demographic that does consist of that. There are people that are naive, that are new to the industry, maybe, who've never been in something that is entertainment or showbiz-esque before, and as a result, they're not prepared to handle that scenario. But to be completely honest, that's not most people who are going to be seeing this tweet. That's not most people who are still a content creator in this industry. Because women are not, they're not fairies, they're not babies, they're not damsels in distress. They're people. And just like any other person, women are capable of thinking about things in a transactionally minded way. And that subsect of people, that at the very least significant minority in the space, they are not they're not really encompassed in this tweet because, or actually, when I look at this tweet, I don't see it as being aimed at them because, one, it doesn't address the elephant in the room, which is the fact that some people are going to, when they see a bigger content creator suddenly showering them with attention, and they choose to reciprocate. Sometimes they're not doing that because they don't know better. Sometimes they're doing that because it's a transaction, right? Maybe I get more exposure from doing a collab with them, or maybe sort of, how do I say, indulging their advances, to put it mildly.
No, you're absolutely right.
That's no problem. That's not everyone, right? But that is going to be, in my opinion, most people are in a position where they are capable of evaluating that in their head. Most adults are capable of being in a position where they can evaluate that in their head.
Yeah, right. You could almost flip this tweet on its head a little bit, and you could have a male VTuber come along and say, if you're a big male content creator and a smaller female content creator, does the same thing, then you should be worried about that as well, because there's obviously something transactional going on there as well, potentially.
Yeah. And again, I want to specify, something being transactional is not a problem. Well, actually, for Bao specifically, I don't think that this is a point that's going to fly, because it's just business, right? Like, if you're all content creators together, you understand that personal relations can sometimes lead to sort of cynical gain. If this is a framework that everyone understands and is capable of acknowledging, then this becomes an easier problem to deal with. But that's the second part of the way she finishes the tweet that bothers me, which is, don't walk, run is not a very actionable bit of advice, especially not if you are trying to address people who are capable of thinking in a transactionally minded way. Because something that would have made this tweet, I suppose, a bit more balanced in the sense that it, something that would acknowledge the agency of the female content creators it proposes to address, would be something along the lines of, I promise you it's not worth it, or something in that vein. Because by doing that, it would have addressed both sides of that particular demographic, right? It would be, don't walk, run for the people who are too naive to know better. And it's not worth it for the people who might think, who might be capable of approaching something in a transactionally minded way, but are bad at math. So it was the omission of that second portion that kind of, when I read this tweet, one of my knee-jerk reaction was, and again, this is going to sound pretentious, but it kind of makes the female content creators in question sound like just, pure little idiots, which is not. That's not how this industry is at all.
I'm right with you there. And that's the thing. I think what makes this tweet interesting, and I guess it's why when you're a content creator the size of Bao, you can't make these offhanded, like, unfortunately you're in that situation now where you can't really make out these kind of shower thought kind of comments on Twitter that can be interpreted in a million different ways, because I think what people can take different things away from this based on their interpretation of not only women in general, but then obviously the kind of person Bao is. So kind of when I my interpretation of Bao's tweet, and the reason why I don't take any kind of like negative connotations away from it, is because again, with my own experience with women, particularly younger female content creators, is that at least on the surface, they appear to be completely oblivious to why men are being so nice to them and like showering them with attention and money and stuff, right? And I could be completely wrong in that they are fully aware and are just letting it happen, obviously, because it makes them money. But I just saw this as just like a genuine attempt to provide some advice and mentorship to younger women who who think it's normal, right, that men just treat women in an overly nice and attentive manner, and that they don't want anything from it, when, you know, as guys, we know that when we see a homie, you know, snap their neck and give women their full attention, right, we know what they're after. So I guess it's kind of like that interpretation, I suppose, based on what you think about women, I guess. But you are right. Women sometimes like to act like they're silly, woo, you know, types who need to be coddled. But a lot of women do understand exactly why men are giving them so much attention, and they know how to extract resources from them. You know, we're quite stupid men. We're very simple and easy to read.
And yeah, the last thing that bothered me about this tweet was not so much the tweet itself, but the way that it was followed up, where she identified why she made this. So there was an element of it where it did sort of tie into what you said just then, which was a kind of almost mentorly advice to give to people who are in a position, you know, who are in the same position she was at earlier on in her career as a, you know, small up-and-coming female content creator. Where there's an element of sort of imparting wisdom from someone who's more experienced. That's understandable. But the other way that she framed this tweet was that it was supposed to address a problem. And that's where it starts to bother me. Because, again, there's the element where Don't Walk, Run is not very... How do I say? It is advice that is more dramatic than it is actionable, is the way that I would put it.
Right, yeah.
But also, one of the things that she identified was this was supposed to be a call-out post for male content creators, or in general, just larger content creators, that use their following in a predatory manner to to sort of strong-arm smaller content creators into giving them some sort of favor or benefit or whatever. And if that is the problem you're trying to address, what does making a post like this accomplish, really? Because if you really wanted to solve a problem, and ironically this ties back to the whole thing that you also mentioned earlier, which is why Bao specifically, in the wake of the Cinder thing, is, you know, this tweet was never going to be received well. If we're talking, you know, big, you know, large content creators in this space who are indeed guilty of that kind of behavior, who do use their followings and the size of their followings as both bait, you know, as both carrot and stick, to try and get smaller content creators to behave in a certain way towards them. If that is the problem you're identifying, people who are, you know, slimy and sleazy and underhanded in the way that they interact with other content creators.
Yeah.
What if you really do believe that you are describing real predators, real predatory behavior? Why not fix the problem by naming and shaming who that problem is coming from?
Yeah.
And the thing is, if we were just talking about this problem and this tweet in a vacuum, I can understand why you wouldn't want to do that. Because that would require, you know, when you name another content creator in a call-out post of any sort, that would require you to provide evidence, that would require you to essentially be okay with sending your fan bases to war with one another, at least for a small time period. And it would require you to, you know, have to essentially initiate a sort of a war of social capital with the other person, where, you know, both of your reputations are now on the line because you've made everything public.
Yeah.
And I can understand why that's a risk that not every content creator can afford to or wants to take. But the thing is, earlier this very same year, Bao did exactly that with Cinder. And Cinder's crime was being a bitch to her friends and trying to sign an exclusivity deal with a shared artist under their noses.
And to women, that's the worst kind of crime, is being mean to them.
Yeah. that funnily enough, that's the thing that bothered me the most about this, because in the context of that, it kind of became impossible for me to look at this tweet as just, as a genuine attempt at fixing anything, because it's sort of like, if you think these are real predators, you don't... how do I put this? One does not stop a predator by appealing to its better nature, or even necessarily its desire for self-preservation. Because if said predator is hungry enough, neither of those things will matter to it.
Yeah.
The way that you stop a predator is you blow off its legs. And the way that you do that in an entertainment industry is you crack the masks that they use in order to try and, lure in victims. And it's that part of the tweet does not attempt to do that, like, at all. And that's even though that was the problem that Bao kept, circling back to in her subsequent attempts at framing what she was getting at here, that's never a problem that she ever seems to really be trying to, fix, I suppose. That's the thing that bothered me.
Do you think the problem with the tweet is the fact that sex or gender, whatever the right word is involved? Do you think the tweet would have gone better if she would have just said something like, if you're an up-and-coming content creator, take sex out of it, and a much larger content creator starts showering you with attention and love and all that, do you think that tweet would have been more worthwhile thing to post? Or do you think no matter which way she goes about it, even if she were to take sex out of the equation, to tweet such a thing is just pointless and not really worthwhile?
See, this is where I'm of two minds about this in terms of a personal and professional sense. Because if I were to evaluate this tweet as Bao posting something in order to reach an audience and reinforce her brand image as a successful large female content creator,
yeah,
I think that this tweet, if you took sex and gender out of this, it would have been less controversial, but it also would have resonated significantly less with people.
Yeah, I agree.
Because you could definitely... it's like both of us said earlier on in the stream, where her identifying, small female content creator, large male content creator, the reason why that resonates is because statistically speaking, yes, that is, that's true, right? That's something that happens more often than not when you're talking about a situation where this dynamic is occurring. So I don't think that's pointing out gender was the main problem with the tweet. And I think if anything that, acknowledging that gender dynamics, I suppose. Yeah. That statistically prevalent gender dynamic in these sorts of situations is part of what makes the tweet, eye-catching and effective, and part of why it got, around 5 million views.
Yeah, I see a lot of comments from people, and their main takeaway with it is obviously they read into it. I don't know if it's a fair comparison, but it's kind of like I think of the Kathy Newman, Jordan Peterson thing, where it's like, about about lobsters. It's kind of like they read something in this, which, regardless of what you think about, I don't think is there. They read this as just a blind attack on hatred of like male Vtubers, or just like male streamers, which I don't think about was a point Bao was trying to make there. But I think that, kind of like you said just then, I think for the sake of the branding and for the sake of relatability and resonating with an audience, I don't think gender really was the issue with the tweet, if anything.
Yeah. It was more I would put it down to the context surrounding it and the horrid framing of the issue, in the sense that again, if this is a problem you're genuinely invested in solving, well, it's time to name some names, right? And I suppose this is another personal hang-up, but the thing that makes this irritating to me is that I am almost certain, I know that if Bao is citing a personal experience as the basis for this tweet, which she has confirmed in subsequent streams and statements that yes, she is, it is pretty much guaranteed that she is naming names, but that is only occurring behind the scenes. That's not occurring publicly.
Vague posting publicly, but she's got very specific people in mind. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I would bet my left kidney that is the case. And the thing is, that will work for you and your friends. That'll work for anyone who has the chance, the privilege, or whatever of getting to know you personally. But for everyone else, that is completely useless.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, if you want to fix the problem, there is a big red button you could press to fix it, but it's going to cost you. But it's not a cost that you haven't paid before for an infraction that, at least in my eyes, is much, much smaller. If we're talking, magnitude, if we're talking morality, the magnitude of wrongdoing, I'd say, being a bitch to people versus being predatory to smaller content creators in the hopes of gaining sexual favors or whatever. I'd say that the latter is significantly worse than the former.
Yeah. Well, as men we would. I'm not so sure about women sometimes.
True.
But I guess looking at this chronologically, like when this was the only thing that Bao said, I thought the initial reaction to it was very surprising to me, because I don't think like the average Twitter user would have probably considered everything in the full context like you've explained to us right now. Kind of after listening to you and why you think that way, then considering the whole context around it, I'm like, okay, I see exactly where you're coming from now, because my initial reaction when reading this is I took it in isolation, like at face value as to what she's saying. I didn't consider the context of stuff Bao has said or done, or kind of like what's going on in the wider scope of things. But when you take that external context into account, then I can definitely see where you're coming from there. But I guess if we move on to the next slide, I think this is what Bao said here is an easily defendable position, honestly. But then the follow-up comments from Bao and obviously Shondo coming in, and to be fair, I think Shondo really came in and jumped in because she saw her friend being attacked and just wanted to protect her friends, right? And you can understand in the heat, in the emotion of things, right? You're gonna not perhaps word things the best way and get yourself into trouble. But yeah, if we move on to the next slide then. So after the initial tweet from Bao, so what happens is Bao basically dismisses the angry comments she's getting for her tweets. She's replying to people like under that tweet as well, and she's saying stuff like she's not going to even bother to attempt to cover every single nuance and context about what she means. She's just talking generally speaking. She's trying to make the point that generally speaking you should be wary of potentially predatory behavior from bigger male content creators, and she gets an awful lot of shit for it. And she does a stream and she posts some stuff on a Discord where she basically dismisses the people who are upset with her as pyro pups, who are Cinder's fans, and just generally speaking grifters. And again, when we think about context as to what's going on, why she would say such a thing, obviously this is all happening shortly after Cinder's return, following a Google document and attempted cancellation from Bao, Shy Lily, other people's as well. And then kind of, I think this is where things really take a turn for the worse, is that essentially the big the kind of general voice of Twitter starts to get ringleaders, right? You start to get leaders of the narrative for the people who are part of the anti-Bao camp. So you get people like a male VTuber by the name of Floki, for example, who responds to the clip of Bao's stream. And here he says, I'm convinced this woman, Bao, has one of the more intricate and stronger honey traps in place. Twice she has done rather horrible things. just this year, and twice People Without a Brain line up to play the Shield, doubling down on her sexism, and you'll lack it up like ice cream in July. And then this clearly sets Shonda off, and she replies with groomer outed alert. So I guess we've kind of got potentially three things to unpack here. So let's start with Bao's, I guess, sort of response to the negativity first, and then we can kind of go down to Shonda and Floki. So obviously, what do you think of Bao's dismissal of her aunties as being just pirate pups and grifters? And do you think maybe she should have just ignored it and moved on, or tried to address it in a more constructive manner? What do you think about Bao's response, Sancha?
I think that, to be completely honest, you were I think you hit the nail on the head when you said that this is an easily defensible position, because literally all that she had to do was, so essentially you pointed out how there were leaders, leading voices emerging when it came to trying to build narratives on Twitter or set up a specific framing of what she said that made her position very difficult to sympathize with. And at this point, the problem was that her tweet was morphing into a men versus women issue instead of a I have a problem with this kind of behavior issue. And all she had to do to defend the position was just double down on, no, I wasn't talking about men versus women. I was talking about predatory behavior from bigger content creators. That was all she had to do. But the problem is when she identified those two groups, pyropups and grifters, as like the majority of the people who had an issue with her tweet, I think bringing the whole Cinder thing into it was a mistake, because there were probably a few pyropups who were seeing a moment of weakness and wanted to get a dig in. But drawing people's attention to that is bad, because of I don't view that as a very wise thing to do, because exactly what I said before of, okay, so earlier this year you essentially you tried to do a takedown of another content creator for the crime of being a bitch and trying to get exclusivity deals done under your nose despite being your friend. And now you're talking about a different offense, which is outwardly predatory behavior, but concealed by virtue of the power and difference between two different content creators. And you don't feel the need to name any names? Like that I feel like that's a very... Drawing people's attention to that discrepancy is probably not a great thing to do for the integrity of your argument and position.
Yeah, and it doesn't help that she's made herself by doing that, and then having the reach it did. She basically declared war on. She definitely declared war on Cinder's fan base at that point, and made herself enemies that she really didn't need to. Really.
Yeah, and it showed that the problem was she specified that cost of naming names, right, which is your fan base is going to war with one another. But the way that she said this is, nothing different than the past 5 months from XD, which implicitly states that is a cost she's okay with paying. So that's what makes this seem frivolous, to me at least. The other thing is, if you're calling the people who are criticizing you grifters, you are implying that they do not believe the things that they are saying. And yeah, for sure, on Twitter there are going to be people who are going to pretend to be more offended than they are, simply because they get the chance to farm victimhood points. And I find that behavior to be irritating, regardless of whether it's coming from male content creators or female content creators. But if you're going to be addressing criticism, people who are grifting are best ignored. Why would you bother acknowledging their existence at all? So just, if you are going to engage with criticism at all, why not engage with people who are actually saying it because they believe what they are saying? And if you label most of your critics as grifters, then it's kind of like trying to present your position as if it's something that is completely, it doesn't have anything about it that people would rationally disagree with, which, based on the way that she worded the initial tweet and the context in which she posted it, I don't think that that's the case.
Yeah, if you're going to disrespect and be uncivilized towards everyone, then you're going to basically disincentivize people to try to treat you with civility and respect back, right? Because it's like people don't like being lumped in with disingenuous and bad faith people as well. So if you're gonna be rude to them like that, then you're not gonna get that respect back. But I guess like talking about the grifters and stuff as well. I mean, yeah, she's not wrong in saying that. I did see, a bunch of little male VTubers taking an opportunity, to take pots and I guess kind of, build up their own brand and clout. And I remember seeing one guy, I can't remember. He's like, he's a pre-debut VTuber, but he's like,
I think I saw the same dude.
You know what I'm talking about. But he's like a normal YouTuber.
Was he like, I was going to become a VTuber, and after seeing this tweet, I was too scared.
Yeah, that's it.
Look, if this tweet was enough for you, that's what I'm saying. If this tweet was enough, if you saw this tweet and you went, "Oh, I can't be a male," fuck off. You never were really interested in the medium or the industry or anything to begin with. It was just, you just saw this as a trend that you could hop on that became too costly to hop on now.
Get filtered tourist.
Look, that's exactly right. Like. You've never thought about market demographics. You've never thought about what you could do with the medium. You've never thought about, what other people have achieved before you and success you could try to emulate. It's just, I'll stream with a model now. And there was so much sniveling in that tweet as well.
Pathetic. It was pathetic to read, quite frankly. Yeah.
Why do you need the express approval of a female content creator to become a male VTuber at all? Even like it's everything about the way that particular statement was built from the ground up. Just if Bao's tweet was, if I found Bao's tweet abrasive, that was 10 times worse. Is my gut reaction.
I'm right with you there, yeah.
It just triggered my grimmest response. It's just,
I think the problem is being on Twitter, being in VTubing and being on Twitter where it's mostly women, just it feminizes men, right, guys? You need to make sure to go outside, guys, and not allow the fucking women to turn you into a soppy wet mess, right? That's what happens when you're around women for too long. You turn into one. It's
the concern trolling was certainly there, right? There were people who who definitely tried to play up how much they were victimized by Bao's initial tweet, because everyone who was taking it in that direction, they were concentrating on the men versus women part of her tweet, but not the fact that she was calling out a behavior. And that's the thing that I find the most frustrating about the way that both she and admittedly Shondo tried to respond to criticism of this, because they never resisted that by tying it back to, no, we're not talking about men versus women, we're talking about a behavior.
Yeah, you're right. I think it's the intent, the original intent, I suppose, she was trying to make got lost. And you're much better at articulating this stuff than I am, but if I try to explain it best I can, it's like, again, going back to when kind of Floki gets involved and he becomes like the voice of the opposition, he almost takes control of it at that point. Now he's in control. He's I don't know if it's the right word to use, but he's the aggressor, and now Bao's on the defensive, and he's now decided he's leading. He has the initiative. He's leading the Twitter mob, and he's saying that this is now a man versus woman thing, not a watch out for predators kind of thing, right? So I guess is there a way that Bao, other than just I guess wording it better, would be the only way for Bao to kind of stop this kind of thing from happening, where you get these voices who take control of the narrative and then put you on the defensive? Like, how do you avoid doing that kind of thing? Just don't say stupid shit in the first place that can be misinterpreted.
See, the problem is here, how do I say this? I understand from the perspective of a bigger content creator why situations like this are best left alone. Because if you are going to say something, how do I say this?
It's like the battle
actually,
is
it might be
joined
easier
at
for me
that
to. Yeah. It might be easier for me to articulate this if I went through why Shondo's response in particular was everything, like the worst thing she could have done. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that, because
yeah, go ahead.
Everything about that response just fed into the situation in a way that reinforced Floki's narrative. So The problem with Bao's initial tweet was there were two fronts from which it could be. There were two issues, I suppose, that she was touching on: male versus female, and bigger content creator versus smaller content creator. The problem is, it's a kind of, I suppose it's a kind of sort of Chinese finger trap type thing, where going for one or the other are both equally bad if the critic in question is smaller than you. If someone who is a smaller content creator is trying to take that tweet in the direction of you're just trying to say men bad, and you, as the bigger female content creator, comes in and tries to dunk on them, the problem is that plays into the bigger versus smaller content creator narrative that you yourself, admittedly, have started people thinking about and talking about. Whereas if you go in and you try to meet them on the field of this is a male versus female issue, then now that becomes all people talk about, and not the behavior that you were trying to address, which is being predatory to someone on the basis of a difference in size of following. And the problem is with Shondo's response, when she just goes into this guy's tweet and goes, "Groomer outed alert." Not only did she not reframe it back to what Bao initially intended, which is, I'm talking and complaining about a predatory behavior, not a demographic of people, but it also plays into the problem that Shondo is a significantly bigger content creator, and as a result, her following is, by extension, going to be sicked on this guy. So if we were to go with the framing that this guy's going with, which is, this is a male versus female issue, Shondo's response plays into that because it's you're upset with this because you're a predatory man, right? It could very easily be read as that if you're not being charitable, or if you're not, you're not familiar with Shondo's content beforehand. However, if you want to try and now, with that response in mind, with Shondo's response, groomer outed alert in mind, if you try to reframe it back to the way that Bao initially intended, which is, people exploiting size differences, now it still isn't good for Shondo or Bao because they are bigger content creators than Floki. So it's now bad on the regard. You've gone into a trap where it's kind of too late to pull out the arrow, so to speak. You kind of have to force it through the other side, which is going to be painful, or you leave it inside, which is going to be painful. And that it's I suppose the problem with Shondo's response to Floki was that it put both her and Bao in a position where there was no option to reframe, there was no option to back out. It was just two losing scenarios.
Yeah, I reckon if she probably ignored it, then that would have eventually taken the oxygen out of the fire, and then at that point, maybe people just move on and do something else. It's something that is why Face Connect, I think, is able to navigate through a lot of its controversies. It's because it just refuses to make any public statements about anything and just quietly keeps moving on and pretends nothing happens, and then eventually people get sick of demanding answers and move on.
The thing is, though, I understand if you want to, if let's say your friend or your Oshi is being, attacked by someone who's trying to take their words out of context or saying something that the original poster did not intend. You want to go in, you want to, you clap back at them, push back at them, whatever. But this is where the whole, most people are not, most people don't think about the optics of what they say. They just focus on venting how they feel in the moment. Yeah. Which I understand, but Twitter is like the worst place to do that. So even if Shondo didn't have to be like professional or anything, she didn't have to dissect his position and what he was trying to do in the same manner that we have. Yeah. All she had to do was say she wasn't talking about men or women. She was just talking about a behavior. Yeah. Anything along those lines would have essentially shut down his tweet by virtue of the fact that she has more reach than him because she has a bigger following. And that would be her, it would still be her using her following to the advantage of her position. But it's not something that would have registered with most people, and it's not something that I don't think most people would have a problem with. Because in that regard, it just seems like, trying to take the subject back on track rather than, simply trying to, I suppose, how do I word this? Destroy an enemy, so to speak. Which groomer outed alert is definitely, it's combative.
Yeah,
it is definitely a combative statement.
I found this Shonda's comment to be really interesting, actually, especially when she later tried to defend her position by saying it's a British joke. I guess if I start off with what I think about she's not actually wrong when she says that. She just used the wrong terminology to describe it, and I'll explain how that is very much part of British humour in a moment. But
would it have been? Do you think it would have? Because I think I see what you.
It's a British and Commonwealth. It's British and Commonwealth humour, so you probably understand as an Australian where she's coming from when she says that. I don't know, but sorry, go on.
Do you think it would have been? Because I saw that when she said that it's a British kind of joke or it's like British humour, I saw a lot of people going, "No, it's not. That doesn't make sense." Do you think that people would have been more willing to believe it if she'd used nonce instead of groomer?
Yeah, probably. That was a big issue of it when she tried to defend it as humour, is that she's trying to explain to Americans who have a literal and punchline focused sense of humour. She's trying to explain the subtle irony and hyperbole that's often part of, and sarcasm that's kind of part of, British and Commonwealth humour. So I guess if I start on that first then. So the reason why I would be willing to believe this is like a joke or a meme, well, first of all, you could liken it to okay boomer kind of joke, but actually, how do I word this? So when I go to the movies with my friend in real life, right, and we're in public, right, and we're along other people, he's a guy who likes lolicon, and so I when I meet with him in public, I call him a child molester, right, in front of other people. Now, the reason why I say that is that's not me making an accusation, nor is that me judging him for liking lolicon. I don't care. It's just think about our sense of humour as British people, that when someone likes something that could potentially be perceived as being weird or suspect, then we take it to the nth degree and we call them things that would raise eyebrows amongst people who don't get the context, right? So, so let's say, for example, if I saw my friend just briefly glance at a playground full of children, I'd be like, oh, okay, keep your boner down, mate, fucking hell, calm down, we're in public. Like that, basically, is a big part of British humour.
Yeah. I have the same thing going in a friend group of my own where we joke about how one of us who plays, I think, Blue Archive or something, we make a joke about him having an ankle monitor on. So.
Yeah, exactly, stuff like that, right? But obviously the context is that it's easier to get the context in person because the context is determined in the way you say it. So I say it in a very clearly sarcastic and ironic way when I'm being friendly to people. And when I show you throw these kinds of accusations as well, though, to people who you have a dislike of. So, for example, you might call someone a nonce, and there might be no cause for you to call them a nonce, but it's just like it's kind of like throwing the word Nazi around, but far less serious. You're just calling someone a nonce because you don't like them, or insert any slur here, basically. And then finally, there is like an actual accusation where you are genuinely calling someone a nonce, and the problem with British humour and doing it over the internet is we can't tell. Well, we can definitely tell Shonda isn't saying this to be nice to him, but we don't. It can be difficult for people who aren't familiar with British humour to know if she's just throwing around a hyperbolic insult she doesn't mean to show her displeasure, or if she's making an actual accusation, basically.
See, that's the thing as well. I don't believe that this is a joke, though, because I think that this is
not being a joke later, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And also when I read this, I read it in the same line as when the thing that we now refer to as Shondo's Law, which she was basically saying, people don't need managers. Most people who say they have managers and they're small indies, they're talking about their boyfriends, right?
Yeah.
Where it's something that is designed to be outrageous. That's where the funny comes from. But it is also something that she genuinely means and she thinks is, based off of all of her. The tough part, actually, this is a bit of a personal tangent. Sorry about that.
Yeah, go ahead.
But the tough part about recently, I've come to how do I say this? A lot of the things that factor into I want to say prejudice, but I don't want it to have the same negative connotation that people always attach to that term. in the sense that when Shondo uses, when she comes off as precognitive because she gets something right, for example, saying that, a lot of small indie VTubers, when they talk about their managers, they mean their boyfriends, right?
It's common sense, honestly.
Part of the,
yeah.
Yeah, part of the humor comes from, the fact that she's invoking her prejudice in order to say that. And when I say prejudice, I don't mean like, all the negative things that people associate with that, but simply being able to process data and use that to prejudge, a scenario, or pick up on, signs, patterns, whatever, that allow her to essentially make a prediction that sounds outrageous in the moment, but may very well be proven true over time. And when she's when she's responding to Floki by saying "groomer outed alert," I don't think that's a joke for a second. I think that is Shondo invoking that sense of prejudice, because it's a sort of, you looked at this tweet. Sorry, give me a second.
Yeah, sure, no worries.
It's a sort of, you looked at this tweet about predatory behavior and you started taking issue with it. Very interesting. Like I feel like that's the kind of thing that she was aiming at. But
yeah,
either way, I don't think it didn't read to me like a joke. It was intended to be funny, but I don't think it was a joke.
To me, I think I have a basically identical sense of humor to Shondo does. Honestly, I think I don't know how old Shondo is. I think I'm roughly the same age as Shondo is. I've probably had like a similar. The Spurgy sort of like awful forums goon within me, and the Britishness within me takes a look at that, and I'm like, it's definitely not a joke. She's not trying to be cute and funny by saying that. But she's not throwing in accusation, would be my first interpretation. Rather, she's just showing her displeasure with someone, kind of like I mentioned before, in the context as to why British people say some of the stuff we do. But I think one of the biggest problems with what Shondo said is, again, it's in relation to her branding. I mean, well, and as well, like you said before, it's not the most, on a personal level, I do think it's slightly funny, but on a professional level, though, it's not helpful or constructive or nice, I suppose, to say that to Floki. Honestly, it's like, it's not called for. But then we also need to think about Shondo's branding, and that she does portray herself, despite a lot of the rumors and the reputation she has, as a very wholesome, and lovely and helpful and friendly voice to men in particular as well. And also due to her nature as a lolicon VTuber and her fan base, the whole daughter-wife thing they have going on, they get accused of being, pedophiles and groomers all the time. So then for her to say something like this, obviously even a lot of her own fans turned on her for using that language. Yeah.
So exactly like you said, part of the reason why it was bad is because it came from Shondo, right? And that's part of why I thought that this was such a massive misplay, by playing into the whole, male-female thing that Floki was trying to do. Because it reflects especially bad on a VTuber who had a pretty significant part of her brand being, one of the few women that do seem to actually care about, admittedly someone who does kind of, do this whole like GFE thing, right?
Yeah.
But does actually seem to care about the males in her audience, rather than something that is a rather infamous, statistically prevalent phenomenon of female GFE content creators who seem to have a sense of contempt for their male audience.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I could see why it can again, it's not intended that way, but it could very easily be framed as a kind of betrayal of the brand.
No, that's quite, and I think it's, again, for me personally, I still think that Shondo could have defended it. She wasn't in as strong a position as Bowis, but I still think she could have just left it at Gruber out of the alert and not elaborated further. But then if we move on to the, is this the, no, actually, I think it's the one after this. Yeah, chronologically speaking, Rev weighs in. But if I actually go to Shondo's response after she gets called out for saying Groomer out of alert first, this is, again, both Bao and Shondo do this, where they give like a very bizarre follow-up replies to what's upsetting people. And they actually confirm that they are in fact like not joking and that there is some kind of I'm not sure what the quite word is. They actually do mean what they're saying in a
Yeah.
so
It's a kind of
Yeah.
you know, you guys, we disagree with you guys, but in a way that kind of lines up with what you were implying that we were implying. Like it was
Yeah.
very. I think the main issue was they didn't try to reframe the subject, right? That was
Yeah.
they didn't resist the way that people like Floki were moving the conversation itself. They just disagreed with like it became a semantic disagreement rather than one on the basis of the actual topic and how it was framed, I suppose.
Yeah, she said this is a joke, but then immediately in a reply she said, I said the quiet part out loud, and it's like, so you're not joking then.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Thank you very much for the $5 as always, buddy. Thank you.
There was the other thing that I was going to say as well, which is when Shondo says groomer, I didn't interpret that to mean like literal, like groomer as in the crime. I thought I interpreted it as groomer, the funny haha VTuber term.
Yeah.
Not as in not so much like but again, like you said, on Twitter it was never going to be interpreted that way. Let's just say.
Yeah, this is the first of 2 apologies Shondo made. I think I'm interested in what you think about this particular one, Armchair. When it comes to drama in general, and then when things escalate to this point, I think that in this case particularly as well, you don't need to make a reply and make a response or apology or whatever. As quickly as they had to. They could have given it a couple days, a week maybe, and properly. Basically, Shondo's second apology should have been her first apology if she wants to apologize. I think they both rushed into replying to the kind of crap that the mob that was forming against them when they really didn't need to. I don't think this is the kind of drama where they had to get their hands dirty, wade right in there and try to wrestle control back from it. Because when you make an apology, normally once you make that first apology, that's normally it at that point. It's not
people
good.
don't tend to read further.
Yeah, people don't read further. And the problem is as well, is that if you make one apology, and then getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but if you make an apology, then start doubling down and then apologize again, it's like... it
becomes very insincere.
It becomes across as insincere, right? Exactly. It's like, well, you don't mean the apology then, do you really? It would have been better at that point maybe to just double down, and I don't know at that point. If
you are going to double down, do it before you choose to apologize, or ideally separately, without choosing to. How do I say this? Choosing to double down and choosing to apologize are like 2 branching paths. Ideally they should not lead to the same location, right? Don't cross over from doing one to the other once you've locked yourself into one of them.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, again, all sympathy as well, I guess. Not that it absolves them of anyone of any blame, but obviously I do sympathize with Bao and Shondo, because it's always, even if they've earned it or deserve it, it's always scary, and it's always a scary and perhaps a significant emotional event, when you've got several thousand people, demanding your head and screaming at you and stuff, right? So, all the sympathy in the world to the both of them, and I can understand certainly why they'd have a very disjointed and incoherent response to the stuff that's going on. But then, this is why I guess really popular, important people have PR managers and have staff who do that for them, so that they don't have to react to it themselves, right?
I've long said this for ages, but part of the problem of being a content creator is that your job demands you to adopt the opposite mindset that makes you conscious of how your words are perceived. Because when you're a content creator, everything is your content, and all of your content comes from you. You just need to be yourself. You are the source of all of the things that make people love you. So you're not thinking about what you say or how it sounds to someone who doesn't think like you. And that's fine. That's actually usually a good thing, because it means that you can just make your content without getting too many brainworms about what exactly that content entails. But when it comes to a situation where you are being tarred and feathered online and you actually want to try and push back against what is happening, you're at a bit of a disadvantage, because you're not thinking from a perspective that equips you well for doing that. Actually, the word that you use to describe this, disjointed, is I think that that's a perfect way of describing my main issue with this apology, because my issue with what she wrote here is that if I had to sum it up in just one thing, it's how she seems to be of two minds as to who she's even apologizing to.
Yeah.
Because I can, are you apologizing to your audience? Are you apologizing to Floki? Because you can very well make the argument that Floki does not deserve the apology because he's trying to, take Bao's words in bad faith, or that he's taking it in a direction that she didn't intend, in which case it is perfectly understandable if you choose to apologize to your audience for, playing fast and loose with a term that has often been used and weaponized against them.
Yeah.
Right? That is something that I can see being a betrayal of the audience that she's fostered, or it's something that she would feasibly have to apologize for, or could see herself wanting to apologize for. But the problem is, she kind of flip-flops between whether it's the apology is directed at Floki or not. It's kind of, and that's the main thing that weakens this, right? Where she starts off by saying, I said something pretty mean on impulse that's being roughly misinterpreted. Who was it mean to? Is it mean to your audience because it dismisses the significance of when it's used as a tool against them? Or is it mean to Floki, right? Even though you were basically, at least implicitly, acknowledging how he didn't exactly make his post with the intention of being charitable to Bao, your friend, and Oshi, right? Like, it makes sense if that is the case. But then later on, if you start off by saying, I said something pretty mean without, following through with it, when you start off by saying, I said something pretty mean, that implies that you are this, the statement, this apology is directed at the person you said the thing to. But then, as you pointed out, at the very end, she says, being kind to the people who do not deserve it. Like, again, that implies to me that, okay, this isn't, it's not, if he deserved it, then why are you apologizing for the words being mean? Because, well, if he deserved it, then it makes sense that they would be mean, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's like, for the both of them, they contradicted themselves, and it's like, ooh, it's weird. It was a joke, but then you said something mean on impulse, and then you said the quiet part out loud. It's like, Shondo, big stick to a narrative. But
yeah.
But after Shondo made these tweets, it then got picked up. Well, actually, no, was it? I've got the chronology of it now. Yeah, it was. Yeah. Then Rev kind of weighs in after she makes that first apology, and I guess at that point now that really escalates things, because obviously Rev's a very big kind of news drama streamer, and again we've got now essentially another big content creator who's kind of unpacking what Shondo has to say here. So yeah, Rev here says that calling someone a groomer for criticizing a VTuber you like, this isn't British humor, as there's no punchline to this joke. I mean, it's what Shondo said, like we mentioned, wasn't the most constructive thing to say, but it does technically fit within the scope of British humor. But
I would say that
says she wasn't joking.
I think, the thing that Rev said is correct in the sense that if it was a joke, it didn't have a punchline. Because the punchline, when we make those kinds of jokes at, friends in real life, the punchline is, but we know you're not actually that.
Yeah. Exactly.
That doesn't translate online at all. So, yeah. Pavlo, apologies are a lost art. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, the thing is, though, it's like Twitter, or just social media in general, does make it really hard to apologize,
for sure,
doesn't it? Because it's like people never forget and never forgive, and just overly make things a lot more serious and dramatic than they need to be, honestly. So
yeah, that's why, in my opinion, I think one of the first steps that people usually bungle when they're trying to do apologies on social media is who are you apologizing to?
Yeah, exactly.
Are you apologizing to the people who are taking issue with you, or are you apologizing to your audience, or are you apologizing to the person that you injured or attempted to injure in some manner? Because at any given, depending on the circumstances, perhaps only one of those three parties actually deserves an apology. And figuring out which one it is is, it's something that is often overlooked, but a crucial component of the process of crafting an apology that is feasibly interpreted as something genuine rather than just damage control.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I was kind of, I guess, surprised that people would get so upset over her using the word groomer, but then I guess I'm not really well in tune with that part with Shonda's community, or I guess being a lolicon liker and having those accusations thrown against you. But yeah, again, I think just as well that I myself don't have like a massive social media presence, because I would probably make a lot of the same mistakes that Bao and Shondo do. Again, which is why I really like your channel as well, actually, because your kind of lectures on how the Twitter algorithm worked, had no idea that's how it worked. Now I get it. I still don't follow your advice, but I do take it into consideration. And I guess maybe that's what we need, armchairs. We need like a school for VTubers, and we'll have you teach the sustainable, ethical social media use class, right? That every VTuber has to attend. Maybe you can offer it as some kind of service to corporate VTubers, right?
Maybe it would be. I'm pretty sure that would be quite profitable for me if people actually took that seriously. But
it'd be profitable for them as well.
I think that the current method is that I use is fine, because I just put the information out there, and if someone has an interest, then they will find it. It's sort of, how do I say this? It's like what I've said about objectivity on my own channel in the past, where, to quote myself, objectivity is like a very expensive whore. If someone is interested, they will let you know. But if they're not interested, no amount of selling is going to change the outcome.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like the same thing with this. If someone cares about crafting if someone cares about minimizing the avenues for attack on their brand via Twitter as they post, then they'll probably end up finding my advice at some point, even if it doesn't come from me directly. But if they're not interested in that, then, well, who am I to tell them differently?
No, quite. So I think probably what we take away then from, I guess, how Shondo has responded to the situation is, if she does feel like an apology is warranted, then she needed to be more specific on exactly who she's apologizing to and why exactly she's doing it.
Yeah, because there was very much an argument for the fact that she did, depending on your perspective on this, there was an argument to be made that she didn't need to give Floki an apology.
I'm part of that.
If she could identify that.
Mm.
Yeah, because if the guy was trying to take Bao's words in a direction that she didn't intend, maliciously, then fuck it. Just go in guns blazing. But understand why people are angry before you apologize for it, and who who's angry over what, and what you actually feel is a problem for you.
No, that's well said, exactly. Okay. So again, I've forgotten now. What's the next one after this? Oh yeah, right. Then we got the doubling down after the first apology. So again, I understand. I've been on the internet long enough to understand exactly why Shondo responded like this. But then after that apology, which wasn't very well received, but maybe she could have gotten away. I think she had an opportunity to kind of, kind of break off at that point after that first apology, and then kind of just disengage maybe, and just evacuate the situation at that point. But then she made another tweet the day afterwards where she made a joke where she's the CEO of grooming, and so she's basically, in a sense, not taking people's complaints seriously. And it's like one of those things that you do, I think, when you're genuinely quite hurt and offended and you're in an emotional state where like everybody seems to hate you and you're being dogpiled on, so then you kind of turn it into a bit of a sarcastic joke to show that you that you're not affected, but you are really. So I think at this point Shondo's getting a little bit rattled, but again, this just completely destroyed an already quite flimsy apology, and then got people right back into, the pitchforks and the torches were reignited when she did this.
Yeah, and it's the thing that you mentioned earlier, where you kind of just have to lock yourself into doubling down or apologizing, because if you try to mix the two together, they kind of counter signal one another, and you end up with just a jumbled mess of a message.
I'm sorry, I'm not sorry. Actually, this is a joke. Stay mad, right? And then
yeah. I'm sorry and stay mad don't exactly work well together as a single coherent thing.
Yeah. Here we go. I managed to find that tweet. So here we go. Then after that, we go back to Bao again now. So Shondo finally gets a day of respite. Yay! Shondo gets finally. Even though she wasn't the one who started it, she was the main. But she was the main target of attacks for a while. And now we go back to Bao. So Maxwell wakes up, God bless him, one day, because Maxwell collaborates with a lot of VTubers. He's big in the VTuber scene. He does a lot of stuff with Lumi from FaZe as well. And so he gets all this shit on his timeline, and he's like, what the fuck is going on? Like, seriously. And so Bao, again, brings attention back on herself when she gives a perhaps disingenuous summary of what's going on, where she says, if Harvey Weinstein invites you to a party, don't... I said, if Harvey Weinstein invites you to a party, don't go. And it ruffled some feathers, which is... well, had the kind of response you'd expect, really. Again, so what do you take away from this comment, Armchair?
So, there's a few things. First, I think that a lot of people were reading what she said in a way that was kind of, how do I say, uncharitable, not really accurate to what she was saying in her initial tweet, because at this point... Sorry, give me a second.
No worries.
Apologies. Yeah, at this point, people were, no one had made any attempts at trying to reframe the issue back to the fact that she was complaining about a behavior, not a demographic of people. Mm-hmm. So people were very much entrenched in the whole, this is a men versus women thing at this point. So people looked at her going to Maxor, a bigger male content creator, and, sort of basically what sounds like fishing for, what was interpreted as fishing for validation.
Yeah.
And they went, oh, Lamau, what a hypocrite, etc., etc. I don't actually think that that's a valid read of what she was doing, because, again, if you go back to her initial tweet, she points out very clearly that, this is bigger male content creator coming out of nowhere, bombing, love bombing you, giving, making advances on the basis of that disparity in the size of your respective followings, etc., etc. Again, she was complaining about a behavior which Maxor has not exhibited, and which does not seem to play any role in the dynamic between him and Bao. Yeah. So to sort of go off about that, I don't think that was. I think that people who were doing that were not being, were not really interpreting or making an attempt to interpret her initial tweet in the manner in which, in the most charitable manner, let's say.
Yeah,
but,
I think it's... Oh, sorry, go on.
Yeah, sorry. Oh, no, sorry.
No, so I was just going to say, I think it's exercises like this where you kind of deconstruct these kinds of dramas and then go over it chronologically, I think is helpful. I mean, not just in terms of the entertainment or educational value to audiences that we provide as sometimes commentary VTubers, but it's good for... probably why it's good to have a PR professional, or if you elect to not do that and you do operate by yourself, is to go through this stuff yourself as well and kind of look back to try and figure out what went wrong and why your initial message went by so poorly. Because as we kind of go through this, you can see that everything goes horribly off message immediately after the first tweet, where it goes from, as we said before, be wary of predators, to men versus women, right? And then Bao again, she's trying to bring it back to, no, this is about predators. But the problem is, because she hasn't been very clear in her communication and her intent, she's allowed...
People read that as disingenuous rather than her trying to bring things back on topic.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right.
The other thing is, the Harvey Weinstein thing was, I feel like that was not the right that was not the right analogy to go with, for two reasons. One, how did people fix the Harvey Weinstein problem? Oh, that's right, they named and shamed him into jail. Like that's how they fixed the problem. Mm-hmm. There was an entire movement around naming and shaming. That's what got him into prison. So if you really care about these predators and stopping them from doing their predatory things, where are the names, But But the second thing is, it's very, at least this is my reading of it, it's very ironic that Bao uses the Harvey Weinstein inviting you to a party analogy when she and a bunch of other indies were in the exact same scenario with Vshoujo, and none of them said anything until everything was over. Like, it's just so, it's very, I find it doesn't make what she said wrong, but it does make it funny. And that was the thing that immediately struck me when I saw her use that specific analogy.
Yeah, it's probably just the first example that came to her head, and she couldn't think of like another one, right? It's probably where that comes from, I reckon. But
yeah, probably, and that's the other thing as well, which is like very often what tends to happen in media is people just they take things that happen and they dumb it down to just being word that encapsulates a feeling, usually something positive or negative, and they just throw it around without acknowledging, the mechanics of how it works or whatever. Yeah, exactly. Harvey Weinstein as a case study had meaning, and when we just throw them around like that, then okay.
Actually, sorry, can you give me just 1 minute?
No problem.
Just give me a...
All right, while Maulington is gone, did any of you guys also have the same reaction to that summary that Bao gave? Because I know that I myself made a tweet pointing out the irony of the fact that a Vshoujo party attendee who stayed quiet about the entire thing, invoking Harvey Weinstein, there is a very amusing irony to that. But I was wondering if anyone else also had the same reaction to her using that specific analogy. Umbrella? Oh, hello. Yeah, I did? Okay. Like I said, her admitting that was going to backfire on her. Yeah, exactly, right? It's all well and good when we could talk about bigger content creators, when they're nice to you out of nowhere, that's a bad thing. You should definitely run, right? But when a company does it, oh, now that's different. When in reality, if we're being objective, both things are equally bad, but in one case, people go along with it, not because they're naive, not because they're stupid, but because they're going about it in a transactionally minded way. And it's sort of like, just because you're bad at math does not mean it's not still a transaction. And I suppose that was the kind of thing that kind of undercut the message for me a little bit.
Okie dokie. So yes, hello everybody, I'm back. And then finally, so if we get onto the last part of the Bao Shondo stuff, let me get the entire tweet up because I can't, there's such a long apology, I can't fit it all on a screenshot. So here we go, let's get it on screen. So, Christ, it's such a big apology. How do you want to do this, RJ? Do you want to...
the large one.
Do you want me to read it out? It's like, how do we... What would be the best way to get your thoughts on this?
I can help you narrate if you would like.
Okay, let's do this one paragraph at a time then, but then I'll kind of like include this as one paragraph. So she says, starts off with, "Hi everyone, this is Fallen Shadow. I'm feeling much more stable and would like to now sincerely apologise for my recent behaviour on social media. I don't believe in using mental illness as a crutch or an excuse, and I would like to take full responsibility and accountability for how embarrassingly dumb I've been recently." What do you think about that as an opening statement?
I mean, again, it's a very obvious, it is it's trying to signal humility that she feels and knows that she fucked something up, which again is like it's fine. It makes this in a vacuum. It would very much be a universally genuine apology, but I'm very much in the same camp as you are in the sense that if she reversed the order of posting this versus her previous statement, it would have come off a lot more genuine to a lot more people.
Yes, but there is an improvement though with this apology because
for sure.
As we address this time now, she's very specific on who she's apologizing to now. So she directly speaks to Floki and says she's sorry for the mean tweet. She admits that it's pathetic to involve herself for no reason and it was thoughtless of her to call Floki a groomer. Yeah, she's honestly thought that he was being a jerk and genuinely didn't think what that word would imply, which I'd be inclined to believe, honestly. I have a very blunt, very British, crude sense of humour, and I throw around words like groomer or whore in a joking way all the time on stream. Again, yeah, we've been over this before, but joking is the wrong way, I guess, to frame it, but I can't really, be too harsh on Shondo for that. Rather, it's just, it's not quite banter either, because banter more describes
banter something you do between like
friends.
Someone who knows that they are someone who knows that they are doing it with you, right? Banter requires acknowledgement from both parties in order to constitute banter, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's just meant to, it's a weird social figure. I don't think we have a word for, just to express displeasure with someone, basically. But yeah, she says that it was done bad jokes and I screwed up by forgetting I was on an entirely different website responding to someone in a way it would be impossible to glean context from. Someone who throws around words like this to complete strangers just isn't the person I want to be. I literally did not even consider that my actions could cause you upset or make people attack you. I'm deeply sorry if my words hurt you or anyone else who saw it. So I mean, when I take a look at this paragraph here, this comes across as a lot more genuine and honest, and she's clearly had a proper think about it, which makes sense given she said this about 5-6 days later after the first apology. So yeah, what do you kind of think about this paragraph?
I think in the initial apology, I myself am of two minds as to whether Floki, I suppose, how do I say this? If her position was that she thought Floki was being malicious towards a content creator she liked, I think it would have been possible for her to actually say that, but saying it now is probably going to, it would undercut the fact that she is apologizing to him. I think that if with a lot of workshopping, it is possible to have both of those things simultaneously. If you say something along the lines of, I think, my initial reaction was that I did think you were taking this, Bao's words in a way that she didn't intend, and I reacted hostilely to that. But however, my reaction was still disproportionate, and for that, I apologize. Like, I think it is possible to do that. But the main issue was that I don't even know if she had segregated those two things in her mind when she made that first statement.
Yeah.
And while this statement is better, it is undercut by the fact that she ended the previous post with people who don't deserve the kindness or whatever, meaning presumably Floki.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, this apology's actually worked quite well on me, I guess, because again, when I read in this, it's like she's explaining exactly what her thought process was and why she decided to do the things that she did. And that doesn't make it okay, right? Just because, you take accountability, you apologize, and you explain why you did something that could be perceived as being bad, doesn't mean an apology has to be accepted, and it doesn't make it okay. But certainly by being, incredibly open and honest about it like this, does, I guess, incline me to be more compassionate and patient, I guess, with Shonda's behavior, and takes a lot of that emotionality I might have towards Shonda, because I kind of look at this and I go, oh, okay, you know what, yeah, that's fair enough. Don't do it again, I suppose, but I'll forgive you this time. It kind of humanizes her a little bit, I suppose, and it stops almost becoming it takes the point away from being a gender war a little bit, and it brings it back into being, this is a real human being who we're expressing our hatred or anger towards at this time, I suppose. Yeah.
And it's, how do I say this? It is an inherent effect, it's an inherent limitation with the medium of social media that you essentially, with or without your awareness, you sign on to when you use it, that you and the people you are engaging with are not going to be able to fully perceive the other person as being a human being. Like that's it sounds bad when you just sum it up in as brusque a manner as I did just then, but unfortunately that's just facts. When we talk to someone else via Twitter, I don't see them like as a person. They don't see me as a person, because we're just usernames and text on a screen. Maybe a few pictures as well. But this is, it's just a phenomenon that once you start trying to speak publicly on Twitter, it's just something that you are, how do I say this? A lot of successful content creators get by never having to acknowledge, at least consciously, that that is a phenomenon that they are having to deal with every time they, say something online.
Yeah.
But I don't think there is any harm in acknowledging that those are the circumstances that we've all been prescribed when we choose to use social media as the medium of our, as the platform through which we communicate with others. And I think that in this regard, not knowing that that's the case kind of bites you in the ass when you're not expecting it, as it did with Shondo and Floki.
Yeah, this is something I wanted to bring up in part 2 when we get towards the male VTubing element as well, and just taking a look at VTubing as a medium and an industry and kind of like the trends and the metas that were within it as well. But do you think that VTubers, just generally speaking, I guess it's individuals as well, are more guilty of this than others? But I don't know, I feel like sometimes that VTubers are like way too fucking nosy and like over socialize and have an issue with staying in their lane, because there are dramas that take place between, let's say, like big YouTubers, for example, but I can't think of one simple example. I can't think of like one time, for example, a big YouTuber like, say, the Spiffing Brits, or any of those really big, huge YouTube content creators have. I don't know what their politics are. I don't know what they think about other creators in the sphere. I don't know anything about them other than what they like to do for their content. And it's just something I've kind of observed with VTubers, is that they seem to have an addiction to Twitter almost, and they have like this obsession with letting everyone know what they think about everything. And I'm wondering if that is causing people problems as well.
Are we talking VTubers as a whole, or just the ones that stream on Twitch, though?
Yeah, I guess it means when you frame it like that, I suppose, yeah, I guess you would have to separate it between the YouTuber types and the Twitch types, because I think, I don't know, anecdotally speaking, it seems to be Twitch indies seem to be the
I
worst.
do think that it's not exclusive to Twitch in any regards, but it does seem to be more prevalent given that if you start segregating by that demographic. So it's, how do I say this? I think it's a combination of two things. One, which is like you said, a lot of people like to participate in drama, but not for the purposes of like actually learning anything from it, I suppose. It's this sort of almost like when you do something out of habit rather than with some sort of intention or purposeful goal in mind. Like, I'm participating in this shit flinging, so to speak, not because there's anything not because I want to stop the shit from spreading or whatever, but because I just enjoy the smell. Or it's a combination between that and also, I suppose, the kind of I don't know if this is a Western exclusive thing, but this idea on Western social media specifically that victimhood is a source of social capital. Everyone wants to claim, I suppose, that victimhood status in any sort of controversy or whatever that they may even be tangentially perceived as affecting them or being involved with, I suppose. And the thing is, you could actually, the example that we made fun of earlier, when the guy, in response to Bao making that initial tweet, went, "Oh, I'm so scared. I'm shivering in my boots. Is this how all people perceive all male VTubers? If that's the case, I guess I just won't debut anymore." It's people can, people view that as a way of getting sympathy, especially on Twitter, and it's sort of as a way of getting sympathy, social capital, acknowledgement, ass pats, whatever you want to call it. But like you can't really. I don't think you can deny that is an inherent sort of incentive behind the kind of performative, unnecessary participation in these sorts of melees that happens so often in the Western VTubing sphere, I suppose.
Yeah, it's learned behavior. It's definitely learned behavior. It's like, but again, it's like, as we'll get into a little bit later with men versus women. Women are allowed to behave like that. Men really not so much.
Yeah. Well, actually, this is something that I was talking about with Maulington before this stream. But I was watching when this happened. Actually, Rand Cossack, if you're in chat, because I saw you around earlier on in the stream. You sent me a link to a VOD immediately after this, or sometime after this tweet, Bao's initial tweet went up, when she was explaining on her stream the sort of the rationale behind it, how she was thinking about it. There was one specific moment in it where she says something along the lines of, I hope, I've known male content creators who engage in this kind of behavior. I hope that if any of them saw my tweet, they are shaking in their boots. They are terrified that one day justice will come to them, or something along those lines. And I'm just sitting there. I don't know if this is like a male-female thing. I'm just sitting there going, why would they be scared? Well, if you have the names, you have the ammunition, why not shoot? It's sort of, it is something that I've observed as a very anecdotally female thing, to sort of hope that the evil people or the predators will hear your, I suppose, your attempts at indirectly or somewhat vaguely outlining a problem, and from that be motivated, whether through an appeal to their better nature or simply through a feeling of, vague fear at the potential consequences of their actions, have a change of heart as a result of that. When, like I said earlier, that's not how you deal with a predator.
Yeah.
You have to put them down. And in an entertainment industry, the way that you put them down is you crack the mask. And the thing that made it especially infuriating for me to hear her say that was earlier on, she identified that is exactly, she even used the analogy of they use a mask to lure in their victims to describe how these predatory, bigger content creators do their thing. And I'm just sitting there going, okay, if you know that that's how they work, why not do something about it? That's more tangible than just, if this is you, you know it, right? You know if this is you, right? Like okay. it's sort of, I just don't understand. Well, that's a lie. I do understand why people are that indirect, but it doesn't become less frustrating even if I understand I suppose the underlying factors and why that's a thing. It's I've been trying to figure out how to word this for a while, but it's when you have a problem like content, big content creators acting in a predatory manner to people who are smaller than them and successfully hiding that behavior because of that disparity in following size. When you are confronted with the problem of that kind of predatory behavior, and you have the ability to quote unquote fix it in the sense of, cracking the mask, naming and shaming, creating a stigma, etc., and you don't do it, you're not guilty because you're not the reason why the problem exists in the first place.
That's what I said.
But you are responsible in the sense that you are a factor in its continued existence in its current state.
Exactly.
And if there is fallout, you will probably be liable for it in some way.
Yeah, it's not easy, but it's like, you unfortunately, you are part of that chain, unfortunately.
Yeah, and I suppose that separation between being guilty for something and being responsible for it is something that is sorely lacking when people try to raise issues that are worth acknowledging. Again, part of the reason why I think both you and I are in agreement about, the fact that Bao's initial tweet was, even if it was, poorly worded or badly framed, it was still a valid sentiment. It's because, what she talked about does happen. And, it happens without people being able to properly acknowledge or quote-unquote fix the problem, because doing so is costly and often a cost too precious for the quote-unquote victims to be able to pay. And I say quote-unquote victims because, well, you do need proof, right? You need proof of some sort. And that's part of what annoyed me about her tweet not being actionable, which is, how do I put this? don't walk, run. Like, if you just look at it on the surface, that is decent advice in the sense that, don't engage, etc., etc. But the thing is, does that actually help you? In a situation where you have a bigger content creator that is approaching you and being very insistent about trying to, get you to lower your guard around them and open up to them or whatever, is it a feasible response to just instantly shut them out? What if they take that as a narcissistic injury, and they then decide to weaponize their following as a way of getting back at you by spreading rumors about you or whatever, in response to you doing something as civil and simple as just not engaging further?
Yeah.
What do you do then? Because that is very much a threat that people have to deal with. And again, in situations like this, how do you safeguard yourself? It very neatly coincides with how do you prove an allegation that you are making if something does end up going wrong in the future. You record proof. And it's such a simple thing. But the fact that it wasn't mentioned in the initial tweet is something that's maddening to me, because this whole idea of all you can do is not engage and run. No, what you can do is, even if you are, more transactionally minded, you want to sort of engage a little bit to maybe see if something can, something beneficial can be gleaned from this relationship, right? And again, it doesn't have to be just a bigger male content creator. It can just be a bigger entity in the space. Let's say, I don't know, a company or something, right? Like, let's say that's, someone that probably you suspect doesn't have the best intentions, but maybe someone who your association can give you some sort of benefit for.
I think there's actually
you can engage. Sorry,
I was going to say, I think there is like a relatively pretty good case study already to kind of touch upon those concepts you're talking about. Immediately, my mind goes to the evil toaster Google document from.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So at any point, I mean, I don't know. Like, as men, we don't, I guess, really understand the female response, I guess, to power. I hate to use these words because it's such a.
They've been corrupted by the way that they've been slung around on social media.
Power dynamics, right? So I understand that women, particularly women who are treating this as a full-time job and very seriously, are like scared at potentially upsetting someone who has big connections to VShojo. But at any point, any one of those several women in the Evil Toasted documentary and document could have taken the screenshots of what he was saying and then gone public or gone to Zentre or VShojo or whoever and said, one of your affiliates, one of your guys is making us uncomfortable and doing all this shit. So they didn't need really to be worried about going public with it, leading to them being blacklisted from VShojo or kicked out or being made to be really unpopular or the enemy on Twitter, because the evidence is right there. Like, no reasonable person, given the evidence and all the they're clearly the victims in that situation, so they didn't really need to be that worried about it. So if they exercised a bit of what's the word, moral courage, then things didn't need to escalate to the point they did, really.
Yeah, it's sort of, how do I say this? If you want something to be actionable, you need to address the reasons why it happens. And this is the thing. Anything aside from don't walk, run is not going to be popular advice to give to people who are potential victims, because it places responsibility on them in some way. It is your responsibility to record what is being said. It is your responsibility to, go and approach other people, perhaps with the risk that the person you've entrusted with actually taking grievance with the behavior you've identified will also turn against you. Because that is very much the case with VShojo. I think everyone understands that. Yeah. But the thing is, that's never going to be a popular thing to come out and say, because everyone's going to look at that and go, "Oh, okay, so you're just victim blaming," and they just use that term as a sort of blanket, sort of
so
refutation to saying that you have any agency whatsoever. Which again, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? If you don't try and see places where you could potentially utilize what agency you have to mount a response or prepare for the worst, then you are always going to be caught off guard. Yeah. And that's the thing that's why I don't like the way that the tweet was initially framed as just directed at people who are, with the assumption that those reading it are too stupid or too naive to know better. In reality, in most of the cases where this has happened, that have gone public, at least from what I've seen, there have been things that people could have done to do differently. Am I going to hold it against them for not doing that the first time? No. but there are learning opportunities for everybody else. And I think that a major learning opportunity is missed. Well, ignoring the fact that Bao presumably has names of people who engage in this behavior and isn't choosing to share them for whatever reason. Ignoring that, even if she just wanted this to be some sort of didactic exercise where she teaches people what they could do, it is a lot more helpful to say to someone, if someone reaches out to you and they're being very intimate, or they're trying to be very intimate or whatever, record, take screenshots, archive your conversations. There's nothing wrong with doing that. Personally, I mean, when I've had, people talk to me about things, right? One of the things, when someone new pops into my DMs, especially if it's about a topic that I've talked about on stream or whatever, I have a personal policy of saying, treat what is going on in our conversations as if it is private, but still recorded.
Yes,
right? And
exactly.
It's, I'm not going to be leaking anything. No one needs to know that we've spoken to one another, but don't make the mistake of thinking that I'm not keeping a record of everything that is said between the two of us, right? Like, that is something that, again, this is why Bao in particular has put herself in a very interesting bind regarding this, because any rational person, two content creators talking to one another who both rely on this to make a living, they would be able to understand rationally that this is in consideration to both of their careers. Because at the end of the day, guess what? It's business. But the problem is, Bao herself has played a significant role in stigmatizing, acknowledging that, people do this for a living. They want to make money. They need to make money doing this. And as a result, it becomes a little bit more awkward if she's the one to come out and say, it's okay for you to, record your private conversations with other people for the sake of self-protection. Because at the end of the day, this is your career. This is their career. Both of you have an incentive in making sure that neither of the two engage in funny business, right?
Yeah, exactly. Sorry, 1 second.
And it's such a basic solution, but it's not one that people tend to talk about because, well, I suppose it's not regarded as being like fashionable to acknowledge or whatever.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It's like, it's part of the, I guess, Western VTubing tries to create this magic where all these groups of YouTubers who get together, particularly the big popular ones, are all like besties, they're all best friends. It's kind of like a Nickelodeon kind of like show, right? Like Drake and Josh, but for VTubers, where they're all actually like family and friends. But the reality of the situation is that they do compete with each other, even if they are friends. This is a business. They're here to make money. It's if they're as big as they are, it's probably their full-time job as well, their only source of income. And again, not to sound like some kind of sexist, but my lived-in experience is that when you have large groups of women together, and large groups of women who are competing as well, especially when it involves the attention of males, they don't always play nice, play fair, and get along with each other. So they absolutely do have cause, to record this information. But it's just generally good life advice as well when you're on the internet. Even if it doesn't matter how much you trust the person you're communicating with, one or both of you could always get hacked, and then all your DMs, messages, etc. get leaked. Everything you say on the internet, you should never say anything on the internet you're not comfortable with the entire world knowing, essentially. And if you're posting something you really don't want people to know, then don't write it down, period, and especially don't write it on the internet. Don't even have a conversation either, because that can be recorded as well.
Yeah, and it's also, like I said, where if you tell someone you're going to be recording, treat everything you say to me as if it's recorded, even though it's private, right? I think that there is room. I think, well, I mean, personally for me, it's never been a problem when I've said, like, just don't take it personally. It's just a policy that I have when I'm talking to, again, strangers on the internet, right? But it's not designed to be some sort of attack on the person you're speaking to. If you say to them, treat what is said between us as private but recorded, right? But it's more just if the person you are speaking to is capable of perceiving what they do as a job, or what they do as something that they would like to turn into a career, this is something that should be able to be, internalized and computed. The idea that it's not personal. It's about just making sure that both of us are, both of us keep everything above board and we're both fine with what's being said or done or whatever. And it's a bit of a lost art, I feel.
It is, yeah. I think I don't know whether it's like Extreme Thinker makes a good point. I don't know whether it comes from toxic positivity. I don't know whether it's some kind of... I tend to find that some VTubers, particularly, again, the Twitch ones in particular, try to... I guess it's a general VTuber problem. They try to distort things that go on in their sphere in a way that's kind of contrary to reality. So kind of what I mean by that is you'll get VTubers who will say stupid shit on their past lives, and then when they get called out for it, they act like offended or disgusted that you would dare, bring up something they say on a publicly available past life. And it's like, well, excuse me, sweetheart, at the end of the day, the internet doesn't work that way. You can enforce your etiquette and rules on when you post shit so publicly and brazenly at the end of the day.
Yeah, there is room, there is a time and a place for idealism, right? But how do I say this? If you are aware that something you are going to say is going to offend any group, whatever that may be, and you are okay with that, don't expect charity from that same group, I suppose.
Yeah. I guess the kind of I need to shoot off in about 8 minutes, unfortunately.
Yeah.
No would you be okay? Would you be okay with doing the part 2 about the actual male VTubing part at another time? Perhaps?
Oh yeah, sure. I'm more than down to do that.
Great, thank you. I just one last point for that last 8 minutes is I've not really thought about this kind of to a large extent. It's kind of like a shower thought that's kind of juggling together in my head a little bit. But when it comes to, I guess, the optics involved in calling out, content creators and having these spats over Twitter and stuff, is that one thing that bothered me, I suppose, about the major ringleaders who were sticking it to Bao and Shondo is that even though they were, I guess you could say, they're on the right side and that they are the victims, I guess some of the behaviors and language they were using was quite unnecessary and pathetic and a bit like over emotional. And now I'm not going to blame people for having a bit of spite and anger in their like replies to being insulted or whatever. I don't have a problem with that whatsoever, but there's kind of like a limit of where you're going way too far. And like some people were having full meltdowns, like almost lol-cow-esque meltdowns at what some stupid anime women on the internet said. And I guess one thing I want to kind of...
Oh yeah, sorry.
Sorry, no, go on.
Yeah. I was going to say, if you don't take issue with it, I'm more than willing to play the villain and go, I do take it. I do think that's a bad. I will take issue with it because, like, I don't like it when people express their disagreement with something by simpering and whimpering and hoping that other people go on the attack on their behalf.
Trauma dumping and bringing up unrelated shit.
If you have an issue with something, take out the spear, whip out the gun, and do all the shooting and stabbing yourself.
Yeah.
Like, don't just cower in a corner hoping that someone else will pick up the weapons and do the dirty work for you. Just, if you have an issue with something, if you feel spite or a narcissistic injury, defend that on your own. You're an adult, for fuck's sake.
Yeah.
You have the ability to speak. You have a platform and a medium to do so. Just do it yourself.
Based, well said. But it's like, one thing I want to bring up as well, in addition to that though, is it's like, even if you're in the right, always be conscious of optics, especially when you're going after big content creators. Again, talking about business, and I know this sounds very Machiavellian, but seriously, with the way some of these guys were behaving, even though I guess they're well within their rights to do so, considering they were indirectly maybe attacked by some of these comments, I've gone away like not wanting to, I will never associate with some of these guys in particular, because I have a very like low opinion of them now. And it's not just a case of it could, when you conduct yourself in such a bizarre and inappropriate manner in front of so many people to see, you don't know what bridges you're burning, and you don't. That can be your first. That can be your first impression to many people, particularly important people or VTuber corporations, for example. If you want to go corpo, and you know people are not going to want to touch you, right? Even though you're right, you might be radioactive to touch, so that's something you need to be conscious of as well. And it's generally best practice. It normally is good that if you are going to call someone out, that you stick to the facts, you have your receipts, and then you explain as logically, calmly, and rationally as you can what your problem with their comments are and why you have a problem with it, and how they can potentially learn from it. When you throw your toys out of the pram and bring emotionality into it and make yourself look like a bit of a prat, that impression's gonna last.
That's gonna turn people off.
It's gonna turn people off, and it's gonna stick with you for a long time.
It's literally the Gus Fring meme. You take issue, I take issue with what Bao and Shonda said because it was retarded. You take issue with what Bao and Shonda said because you're retarded. Like, it's I do, like, we agree on the point that, we find their statement disagreeable, but how well you articulate that determines whether what you're saying is actually valid or not, or it's just you melting down to farm victimhood points.
Yeah. And again, it's like, it's unfortunately as men that you can't really, again, do that either. It's a bit, I guess it depends on the way you do it, but generally men don't like watching other men, whine and sulk because people are mean to them.
Yeah, this is going to tie much more into, we can elaborate on this more in part 2 of the stream topic, but people have different expectations of men and women. If a woman complains about something that makes her uncomfortable, but doesn't actually take any steps towards addressing the situation, people are usually fine with that, because the important thing is that she has expressed how she felt, she has had that problem acknowledged, and after doing that little bit of emotional labor and making up for the fact that something has hurt her, we can then go on to address the problem. People don't have that same sort of consideration for men usually. No. Because if you talk about a problem, you whinge about a problem, but you don't take any steps towards trying to fix that problem, as a man, generally people are less sympathetic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, men are expected to solve problems, women are expected to talk about their problems, and then they're good.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
But anyway, let's end it there. So guys, what we'll do is we'll do a part 2 where we'll talk about the male VTubing part, I guess, of this stream, where we'll talk about whether male VTubers are destined to be a joke, and we'll talk a little bit about the medium of VTubing as well. Unfortunately, I did hope to get it all done in this stream, but unfortunately my mum needs some help with stuff, and she's just had some surgery, so I need to go and give her a hand with some stuff. But thank you all very much for watching, and Armchair, as always, thank you very much for the collaboration. Always love getting
you for having me on.
No worries at all, my friend. Thank you very much for coming on. I'm always interested in hearing you deconstruct these kinds of problems, because you always have this ability to really articulate like the big picture of it as well, and kind of nail all these little parts of context that I don't see in the first instance. So yeah, you always kind of broaden my thinking, I guess, when I look at these kinds of dramas. So no, thank you very much for the stream, and thank you very much for your thoughts. And yeah, I guess I'll see you tomorrow for the Oshi Push stream.
Yep, I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome, great. Thank you very much for watching, guys. Thank you for the donations. Thank you for the memberships, and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, Armchair. Thank you, guys. Enjoy your day. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.